There we go. There was the computer voice telling us the recording is in progress.
Yes.
Today is May the 8th, 2025. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. It is 8:03 a.m. And in, is it Belgrade where you are or
Yes.
near?
Yes.
Okay,
Near
Belgrade,
Belgrade.
Serbia.
Mhm.
Sladjana Milosovic. And I know I didn't say that perfectly, but Sladja, we're going to go with first names. And thank you so much for being with us. I assume it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon for you.
Yes. Hmm.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you for being with me. So let's just get this kicked off right away. And would you begin by telling us a little bit about yourself? And I think you have a family business that is connected with your logotherapy practice.
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. It's really an honor being here because I've been listening to some of your previous podcasts with your guests, which I find really very, very useful and meaningful. So it's an honor being here. Yes, well, I was thinking about how to introduce myself. It's always a good question. And I would like just to say that I'm my father's daughter. I'm a very proud sister and aunt. I am a wife, and I am a person with friends in every corner of the world, which I think is a very, very big achievement in this life. And at the end, I'm somebody who is totally in love with music. And although I don't have a professional music background or education, I checked with my violin teacher that I can say that I'm a musician because I play more than one instrument. So those are just basic informations about myself.
Very good to know, of course. And so, you said violin? What other instrument do you play?
Well, I started with accordion when I was very little, and I hated the instrument at that time, of course, you know. I didn't like the accordion, I didn't like the choice of the music I was forced literally to play. But then later on, of course, because you play accordion, you can play piano. This it's not it's accordion way of playing piano, but I can play it. And then when I was 45 years old, I decided to learn to play violin, which was my childhood dream, really. And I did it. And the violin is really something very special in my life. And besides that, I play a national instrument, which my father used to play, which is frula. It's like, yeah, little wooden instrument with a beautiful sound.
Okay, nice to know. Flula.
Frula, yes.
Okay, nice to know. Okay, and so tell us how you came to logotherapy then.
Ah, yes, that is a very good question. I like that. I like to learn from your previous guests about what were their stories. Well, I work as a coach and a supervisor in business mostly with people from corporations, business people. And at one point, when I was about to upgrade my coaching accreditation, I was looking for a school for psychotherapeutical approach to study so that I become a better coach and to understand more my clients. And in that search, it was not an easy search because I have a background, I have a bachelor degree in engineering. So most of these psychotherapeutical approaches are not even, I cannot even apply for them, even for the level of the counselor, not the
Right,
therapist.
I understand. Yes.
Yeah, you know what's going on. So I found the institute in Texas, and only then I read Man's Search for Meaning. Of course, I fell in love with the idea because the Serbian edition of Man's Search for Meaning has on about 20, 30 pages, I'm not sure, about logotherapy itself. So when I read it, I said, wow, this is it, you know, so let me try. And I went to the intro course. Of course, my mentor, Dr. Wimberly, she was absolutely great for the first three courses. And then I had fourth course, fourth year, as I like to say it, with Marshall Lewis. Again, excellent mentor. So I completed it, and then I decided to go to diplomat as well, and it was use of logotherapy in business and executive coaching. And
Nice.
I can tell you, I have different diplomas and degrees and certificates and accreditation. I like to learn, But I think that, and I believe, and it is true, that this logotherapy, diploma in logotherapy is the most valuable thing that I ever did in my learning journey.
I can wholeheartedly agree, excuse me. You know, my first path was biblical studies and so forth, ministry. But when I decided I needed to get deeper into counseling, I tried, of course, Rogerian counseling and Bowen family therapy and various other things, and nothing really inspired me until I really got into logotherapy, and then I'm like, I can't stop. So
Yes.
completely agree with that.
Mm,
So you have a degree in engineering, and obviously it's hard to go from engineering to any kind of counseling or therapy. But I'm just assuming that because so many people find ways to relate logotherapy to many other fields, I imagine that you found some correspondence between engineering and some aspect of logotherapy.
Yes, that's an interesting question. I'm actually connecting logotherapy with absolutely, I think that it can be connected, and I'm connecting it with absolutely everything. Many things that we do in logotherapy are directly related to the physical laws, for instance, from laws of nature. Then also, my idea was a few years ago to write about connection between logotherapy and Aikido. I'm in love with Aikido, also martial art, non-violent, you know.
Sure.
So with philosophy, with nature, with everything, because I think the logotherapy has this higher wisdom in it that enables it to be connected with absolutely everything. And as you said, the right word is inspiration. With logotherapy, you are just inspired to go deeper and deeper. So
Yeah,
connections, yeah, everywhere.
that's that's true. I think most everybody we know in this field will agree with that, you know. Um,
Yes.
I this is I didn't plan this question, so this is impromptu. But after I finished my master's degree in theology, I went immediately into a Jewish studies program at Emory University. And the reason I mention this is because the Department of Jewish Studies at Emory is not an enclave. It's not self-contained. Uh, the way it was described is that Jewish studies is a data field rather than a discipline. And what the way it was presented to us was you have professors all over the campus. Some of them are medical professors, some of them are law professors, some of them are in religion or theology, some are in history, philosophy, whatever, but they're all part of the Department of Jewish Studies, you
Yeah.
see. And that way you can do a degree in Jewish studies and you can go into any area of the university and take classes because there's only two required, maybe three required. There's a language requirement, of course. So I would say that because logotherapy has this sort of uh, interactive ability to, as you just said very nicely, to relate us to any field that we involve ourselves in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice. And in your work, you do a lot of coaching. You work with businesses and so forth. Um, just a curiosity question. You speak English very, very well, but I'm assuming you do at least three languages, if not more.
Thank you. Uh, yes, it's English and Serbian, but also I'm very lucky that our region, the languages are very, very similar because we used to belong to one country, Yugoslavia. I was born in Yugoslavia and I changed 3 or 4 countries until now because of an unfortunate breakdown of the country and the war we had at the beginning of 90s. So I can work equally in Croatian, in Bosnian, in Montenegrin, and probably a little bit in Slovenian, Macedonian. So those are similar languages, but really it's just one, like Serbian, and the regional languages and English.
Yes, I see. Well, I understand that there's a mutual intelligibility between most of those languages you mentioned. It's my understanding that some of the big differences may be that I think Serbian is written in the Cyrillic
Yes.
alphabet, whereas
Mhm.
other languages may be written in a Western Roman Latin
That's
alphabet
true.
and
Yeah.
so forth. And uh,
Mm.
I used to teach world history, and I always referred to the Balkans
Uh-huh.
as Tornado Alley, and
Mm.
because you have uh, the Muslims coming in from the east and the south, and then you have Orthodoxy in the west in the east, and
Mhm.
you have Catholicism, and
Yes.
wow, it's just a very interesting mix of people.
It's actually it is something beautiful, you know. It's this diversity is so beautiful in cultures, in languages, in music, in religions. But the problem is that people are not mature enough to understand that it is a richness in diversity, not the
Agree.
problem if somebody is of another faith or. But luckily, I believe that younger generations are aware of this. They don't see these limits as my generation or the older people used to see. But you are right, you're very good with the history. You see, like the north of the country used to belong to the Austro-Hungarian Empire once, and the south of the country used to be Ottoman Empire. So the culture is very, very different, almost like it's not one country. Yeah.
But I agree, and the clash over diversity may have been very strong, especially in the early 90s there.
Yeah.
But the same is true everywhere. Here in this country, you know, there's this same problem. And the younger people, I think they value the diversity a lot more than some of the older people do. And so uh,
Yeah.
it's a real problem here as well. And I mean, probably more here than it is with you. But I do remember, and I don't know if I should reveal this or not, but Slavoj Žižek, you know, from Slovakia.
Yes.
He, uh,
Yes.
sometimes he says things that are very wise, and sometimes he says things that are just ridiculous. But I think he said that the sense of humor was the first casualty of the war. That when people
Mm.
stopped being able to appreciate their differences and joke and get around it, that was the beginning of the conflict.
Yes, yes. Oh, I love Zizek. Yes, he's like a stand-up comedian to me. I
Yes,
watch some of his videos and I just laugh. I mean, like the last one, which is absolutely wonderful one, is that he's opposed, as a philosopher, he's opposed to wisdom.
yeah,
Very funny video, yes.
yeah. I agree. He's very funny, and I don't know how he can write 10 books a year, you know, or something. I mean,
Amazing.
but yes.
Yes,
But I
yes.
think that's a germane because it makes me come back in my thinking to Viktor Frankl
Mhm.
and you know the after the war, after his release, after he goes back to Vienna, and the whole thing about not believing in collective guilt
Guilty.
and
Mhm.
you know and so forth. So um, I would imagine that is logotherapy and Frankl's I guess approach to life, is it very well known in Serbia?
Ah, that's a very good question. Thank you. Well, when the book was translated, the lady who translated it or helped the translator, she put this part about logotherapy in it, and she described it very well. I'm not quite sure about what her name is at the moment. I apologize. So that was the first opportunity for people whomever would buy a book, they would read about logotherapy, which is absolutely wonderful. I'm doing my best as much as I can to promote logotherapy in everything I do with my clients, with the blog. A friend is actually having writing about it, talking about it. But from recently, I think 3 or 4 years ago, there is a lady, she studied in Croatia with Professor Cvijeta Pahinja, who was a student of Dr. Elizabeth Lucas. And this lady actually brought education in logotherapy to Serbia and Montenegro. So she's now there officially in charge for the education of logotherapists in Serbian and Montenegrin
Very
language.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just this in this conversation, it seems to me like there is a case to be made for logo philosophy and peacemaking, or in building. Well, that was the theme of our last Congress, right? Building
Yeah.
bridges.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and that's something I really liked. And I was thinking when you sent me this question, I was thinking about what more should be done. I mean, but I think just talking about it and promoting it and in a gentle way is going to contribute to people better understanding each other. Because when I say logotherapy, for me, it is love, it is peace, it is understanding. Just as you said, no collective guilt. I mean, many messages of Dr. Frankl are so powerful, and I see people. It's interesting. I started studying logotherapy 12 years ago, and in this time, it's a decade. I could see how many more texts are there, many more videos in our language. People are limited; they don't always speak English, so they can't learn about or German. So speaking about it in Serbian, translating it and using it, and the books are published over and over again. It's a huge progress in the sense of promotion of logotherapy, which will contribute again to people better understanding each other and bringing religions together and people of different nations.
Mhm. Which kind of brings us now to you and your work, because you are a logotherapist in Serbia and you're working in your country and in nearby surrounding countries. And so let's talk a little bit then about the programs that you offer. For instance, I'm just going to go in order. These are all available on your website, and I don't remember the address for that. I apologize, but you can tell us now. So,
No problem. It's a blog on it's Google blog Logo Coach.
Lago
So
Coach.
yeah, with my name, it's easily searchable
Okay.
on online. No problem.
So the first program is called Meaningful Conversations. Tell us a little bit about that, if you will.
Thank you. Well, these are my programs. You know, I work with people in business, and most of the time, the HR would define the objectives that we have to achieve, like to improve communication, team building, leadership skills, whatever. But I've noticed that people would just like to talk about important life topics like life and death and love and meaning. So, this program in particular is just for them to talk and to discuss these topics, and for me to guide them and to let them know about the books, about the articles, about the video talks, whatever podcasts that they could listen to and learn. Because I believe that we should have logotherapy in elementary school. I mean, the world would be a much better place if we were aware from the very beginning of the topics logotherapy is covering, you know. But we come to life completely unaware of, you know, what to expect from life, from the work we choose we will do, from relationships, from whatever. So this is the meaningful conversation program. So we just talk about the important topics related to logotherapy.
Yes. So I'm going to make a rhetorical statement based on what
Uh-huh.
you just said, and that is, so people actually come to work thinking about life and death and the meaning of everything, and they don't just come thinking how I'm going to make a lot of money or improve my status in the world. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, I was thinking about when I was preparing for this, and I wanted to say that the death still has not come in the corporations,
Mhm.
meaning thinking of death, you know.
Yes.
There is still competition, who is going to achieve what. But I see the change because they kept asking themselves, what is the meaning? And when you do the work, the values are always there. So values are important and there are connection with the meaning. But there was in 2001, there was an excellent article in Harvard Business Review, which was just the basic of my diplomat project also. That was, the title is The Corporate Athletes. And for the first time, they were talking about physical strength, mental strength, capacities, emotional, and then spiritual ones. And in this
Mhm.
spiritual part, they talked about the meaning and the purpose and values and everything. So, yeah, it's coming slowly.
It
Yeah.
is, but clearly it makes a difference, and I've found it very fascinating. And you introduced in your because I read your printable workbook. And in on one of those pages, you include a definition of existential intelligence, which comes from outside of logotherapy, but it fits very nicely
Yeah.
within uh,
Mhm.
logotherapy. So, unfortunately, I did not write the definition or did not include the definition of existential intelligence in my notes here. So,
Well, basically, capacity to ponder the deep questions of human existence. That's the definitions. The definition to think about life and death and realities. But then again, it is connected that if you have a higher existential intelligence, you would be able to solve conflicts in a peaceful way. To
yeah,
promote understanding and love, self-transcendence, being open to other human beings, and so on.
very nice. So, the word anxiety just popped into my head, and I was thinking about how a greater, deeper existential intelligence, becoming more in touch with who we are, helps us to resist that anxiety that creates the tensions, maybe in the.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You're right. There is a very good story about. I like that story, short story, either from one of the Frankel's books or from my study material. I can't recall exactly, but there was a lady and she was afraid her husband was traveling for work, and she was sitting at home being anxious that he's not going to come back, that he will be killed somewhere in traffic, and then. Frankel or other therapists told her where is he going to go if he doesn't go home, and she said to God.
Mm,
And that was for her, that was like okay, so I think logotherapy and existential intelligence just helps us to see the wider picture,
yeah,
and yeah.
and I would. Do you can you think of off just quickly? Can you think of any examples of where you conducted this meaningful conversations program, and it had a very clear impact on the person who was experiencing it, like a
Well,
success story?
I was working lately with a lady who was in a very difficult position in life. So just talking about it was useful. But many other programs actually, when we talk about impact, sometimes I see impact directly. Whether it is the question that you see the person just lightens up, and understands something, or indirectly, where after many years, because I like to stay in touch with my clients, which sometimes, according to the coaching rule, it's not completely the rule, or sometimes they think I want them to have again a coaching program, which is not the case. I just like the follow up in the sense that I want to know that they are okay. So many years later, you find out that something helped them. I just last Saturday I spoke with a client whom I worked with 10 years ago, and I was shocked to realize that he remembered all the exercises we did, all the tools I shared. That's a wonderful story. Then another story, I was working with a lady, I was completely unaware, that was before logotherapy. I was unaware what I was doing, but that was kind of the reflection for her, because she was putting too much pressure on her in her work, and her main desire was to become a mother, and she was struggling with it. So during our program, which was one of the longest I ever had, of 18 months, usually coaching programs are 3, 6, 12 months top. We worked together for 18 months, and she gave birth to 2 girls.
Wow. Okay.
So this is what I'm the most proud of, because she could, with us talking and her being relaxed, she could kind of de-reflect from work and from the pressure of becoming mother, because it was not
Yes.
going naturally. And even nowadays, it was a very long time ago, I always send a card for girls' birthdays, and it makes them all happy.
Wow, that's a great story. I like that. Yes. So, in other words, it's a very rewarding practice of what you're doing.
Yes,
Yeah.
incredibly, yes.
It's just a theme that I encounter a lot talking with people who do logo coaching or logotherapy. Or I did had an interview a few months ago with a guy who works with the justice system where people are in prison or in jail, and just the joy that he experienced,
Yeah.
Patrick Hennigan. And the point that I'm raising is, going into a prison or a jail is usually scary and dark and threatening. But he just finds the joy that when you try to reach people on a spiritual level, that noetic um,
Mhm.
connection, it changes the everything.
Absolutely, yes.
So that's
Yes.
a wonderful story.
Thank
Let's
you.
move on then. Let's talk about Audit of My Heart.
Hmm. Audit of My Heart is another interesting program which was I was inspired to do, observing my friends actually who were lost in their 50s, working jobs they hated, and not knowing what they would love to do instead of that work they hate. And I was really shocked and sad to realize that that's their situation. So I
Mhm.
designed this program where we do, first of all, we have a gratitude session where they have to change the attitude and be thankful for everything they have.
I
And then
see.
we do the audit in sense of what they want to achieve, what they to remember, what they love doing, what are their hobbies, what are their interests besides family and kids they are raising. And then we make some plans and we do the wrap up, and we use a lot of humor because here people don't laugh very much. That's another mission of my life. You know, when I was living through the war and a horrible period of 90s, and I went to UK at one point to earn some money to help my studies and my sister's studies. And the first thing I noticed that in England everybody was laughing, and at home I literally could not remember anybody how people look when they laugh.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, because we had isolation, there was war around us, we were isolated, it was poverty, it was the biggest inflation in the history of the human civilization. It was very dark period.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so I just couldn't, I was so sad when I realized that I don't know how my parents laugh, how my friends laugh, how my sister laugh. So after that, and that was almost 25, 30 years ago, now I can't count, I said, well, no, I have to make people laugh, you know.
I see.
So since then, it is my mission. So in this program also, we had a session with laughing and using humor and looking from the humorous point of view to what's going on around.
So the sense of humor was the first casualty of the war.
Ah, yes,
Truly was. Yeah. That's deep, very deep.
very
Audit
deep.
of my heart. Wow, that's very transformative. That sounds like something that I would like to steal from you.
Please feel free. You know, I have a friend, a colleague, she always says to me, how can you share everything? I'm afraid to share. And basically, I learned to share, you know, you learn from situations which are not pleasant. I was working at the faculty, and you know, at the university, people grab area and they stick to that area and they would say, this is
Territory.
my area. Yeah, that's my territory. I teach finances and that's it. Nobody else. Just don't take anything related to finances. And I didn't like that at the university. And I promised myself I will never take the area and just, you know, grab it for myself. So I always share. An audit of my heart, it came, I make a lot of hearts with my flowers from my gardens. And my husband is an auditor, but in very engineering, in a forestry actually. So I combined everything, and that's how Audit of My Heart came up.
I like it. It's very nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
please use that. It's not copyrighted. So
I do appreciate that. And again, for me, I like to call it shareware. You know, you develop
yes.
something. And I like to think that a lot of these things, including your program, if we can borrow Elizabeth Lucas's meditation on a candle,
Mm-hmm.
there's another thing we can add to that, and that is the flame can be passed on and you don't lose anything. You know,
Yes.
your flame continues and someone else has a flame and yours is not diminished when you share it with somebody else. So
Yes, and I think that is also one of the basic things in logotherapy. And this is also what I like in we call ourselves logo family. I like people, I like that there is no competition, you know, everybody is kind of, that's what I experienced so far. Everybody wants to help and to share. Maria Marshall, who has a wonderful explanation of this meditation on YouTube, she's the one inspiring us hugely, everybody. I mean, she has such a wonderful ideas that and I know that she supported so many people. And also, Edward once supported me in a very difficult situation. So I like that in our family, what people teach, they really do in their life. So that's another wonderful thing about
It sure
logotherapy.
is.
Yeah.
Moving on now to the smart arting or smarting program. How do you call it?
Yes, smarting. Well, smart is actually it's I can't say it's my favorite. All of them, I like all of them. But smarting is where we use art to self-reflect and to learn more about ourselves, because this is noetic dimension, not so, I mean, they express with the words, but we are looking at the great pieces of art, or we are
Yes.
listening to my favorite Bach, and then we discuss and we connect it with the self-reflection. Smarting is, those are initials, SM,
Hmm.
my name and family name, and then I just added art, so it was very smart.
Yeah,
Smart.
I think it's very clever. I really absolutely.
Yeah. But there is another a smisao, which is I don't know if you got it. A smisao in Serbian is meaning.
Okay. Well, I figured that there was probably
Yeah. Something.
something like that. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And another thing, smisao is again SM, Sladjana Milosovic, smisao meaning meaning, but misao in Serbian is thought.
Okay.
So very convenient, you see.
Yes. So would you say that it has sort of a is it sort of a same meaning as the word logos itself, or in that ballpark, or in that general? It sounds like when you talk about thought and meaning, that's kind of what Frankl intended when he chose logos to,
August. Yes,
you
yes,
know.
that can be. Well, I was not thinking about that. I was just happy that I have SMISO. In SMISO, I have SM, and MISO is thought. So I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
there I
well,
am.
that's great. It's wonderful when it works
It's
out like this.
wonderful. Who would say so? Yes. And I, through Smart and SMISO, through my little art and installations, and through my short stories, I'm actually promoting logotherapy and basic teachings from logotherapy.
Very nice. And so you've mentioned already that you use uh, works of art and class. Well, Bach, I guess, is more Baroque, but generally what we call classical music. Um, and you have that's is that a way of sort of getting people into I guess, a frame of mind, a noetic frame of mind?
It is because the famous where words fail, music speaks.
Yes, right.
I think many times through music or just looking at the artwork, you got enlightenment. Is that a word? Or
Yeah.
even I don't know if you knew that this is connection with logotherapy and engineering, for example.
Okay.
When you look at the mathematical or equations, the same piece in brain is provoked as when you look at the piece of art. So
Hmm.
I love equations. I just love them. I have them all over the place because when I look at them, I don't understand them completely, but there is something telling me something. Just like when I look at Vasil Kandinsky, whom I really like, or Hilma af Klint, or when I listen to Bach, there is something that gives you the sense that you understand everything. And that's the wider
Yes.
picture, and that is existential intelligence.
Yes, it sure is. That's a great tie, and it makes me think also, if you're familiar with Fert Imagination, the work of Uwe Boschemeyer and others in Germany. Sometimes it's, I know my German is not great, but I think the current terminology is Imagination, or value imagination. They do Verorientierte Imagination, value-oriented imagination, and Boschemeyer is a logotherapist. He worked with Frankl. He developed this technique, and it's basically where you relax. You have a client, they relax, they They're fully awake, but they go into the subconscious. And
Mm.
according to Boshemeyer, and I've done this and it's true, I'll just say it's true on my part.
Wow.
Um, the subconscious presents itself as pictures and not as words.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very interesting, and it's I think you're doing something very similar by getting people into this noetic uh, frame of mind through music and art and contemplation.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's one of the very powerful things
Yeah.
that logotherapy was designed to do. You
Mhm.
know, and so since this is a logotherapy podcast,
Mhm.
let me just say, you had Freudian psychoanalysis, which analyzes the unconscious
Mhm.
uh, in terms of the drives, and you have
Mhm.
Adlerian, which is analyzes everything in terms of power and status, whatever. And
Mhm.
thank God that Frankl says you're missing something very important, the most important of all, and that is the spiritual uh,
Mhm.
part of the human.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
music is very spiritual, and just like the images in the subconscious that present themselves,
Mhm.
music speaks to us in a language that we
Yeah.
can't always put into words.
Yes. Yes. Well, thanks for sharing this work of colleagues in
Yes.
Germany. I have to check it. Wonderful. Yes.
I strongly recommend it, and I will say there are probably some who don't trust it, but I think that it's very, very, very
Mhm.
true, very real, very, very good program. So I strongly recommend it. Another
Thank you.
person who practices is Dr. Stefan Peek, who is a great friend. And
Mhm.
he did the first podcast you may have seen where we talked about suicide. And so he's also someone that you can reach out to, and
Oh,
I would
wonderful.
recommend.
Thank you. Oh, wonderful. You see, sharing is always so good because last night I was giving a workshop to people, and they are mostly psychotherapists and coaches, and they have never heard about philosophical counseling before or
Right.
the book Plato, not Prozac. And they were so shocked, and they were so like, oh, we have to, find out more. So it's always good to share. Besides the fact that you realize how much you don't know, it's good
That's
to,
right.
yes.
It's it's interesting to survey the literature where someone who's been a counselor or a psychoanalyst or some kind of psychiatrist who is trying to find a way to be spiritual, in their counseling, and they've only heard of Man's Search for Meaning. They've never seen any of the other books or never thought of Frankl as actually giving them what they needed.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
okay. Do you coach individuals and organizations? Do you do both? Do you have a private practice?
Yeah, that's a good question, and you ask about my family, so I can
Okay.
relate to that here. Yes, I established. Well, I was working at the university, as I said, and when I left it, I was teaching at the different UK-based program here in Serbia at Cambridge and Heriot-Watt University, and then my husband and myself we started a little family company. In Serbia, if you would rationally think, it's impossible to have a company that is selling knowledge or services related to coaching, audit, facilitation. We used to do trainings and so on. But we survived for 20 years with
Mhm,
some clever strategies, meaning that we have international accreditations and that we basically work everywhere.
mhm.
And my husband, he speaks 6 foreign languages, but real foreign languages, not just like me, regional ones. So in my coaching work, which is my division in the company, he has his forestry audit division. I have my coaching division. I coach for the last few years. I coach only individuals. At the beginning, I used to coach groups, but in the groups that were assigned to complete the project.
Right.
But the last few years, it's just individual coaching, and those are mostly people which are at a higher level of hierarchy. Um, so this is mostly what I do with them.
Okay. Very good. And so do you have a preference? I assume there's a difference between working with groups and individuals.
Uh-huh. Well, I stopped doing trainings and working with groups about 10 years ago. I was just too tired. It's very demanding, you know. With the group, you have more people, you have relations in between, and so on. So, individual work gives me really this is something I really like working, and for me, it's more effective, and I have more sense that I achieved something than with the group. The group usually does the project and then just they fall apart, and I don't have enough time to deal
Sure.
individually with them. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm meditating on that because I'm thinking that, in my case, I am a
Mm,
minister, I pastor a congregation. I've been with this church officially for 8.5 years.
mhm,
And that means I've been actually, I've known these people for 10 years. So that's a very long time. And
mm,
it's not therapy, where necessarily, although I have people I meet with, on a
mhm,
weekly basis, not many. Um, but uh, I came 8.5 years ago
mhm,
to this group, and over that 8.5 years, 15 people have died. And I knew them when they lived at home. I knew them when they transitioned into maybe a assisted living or some other kind of situation, hospice care or the hospital and so forth. So um, it's interesting because I feel exactly
mhm.
what you mean when you say it's very demanding when you have to work with that many people and you know but the difference I guess is that it's ongoing and it just never
Yes,
so
yes. Well, when you're saying this, while you're telling me this, I understood that I'm working for a certain period of time, 6 months, and some of these people just disappear. I never see them again. But you are kind of a huge part of life involved in their lives. Yeah.
yeah. So that's interesting. That's one reason I wanted us to have this conversation. And
Mm.
you may have seen my conversation with Sabina Iniga
Yes,
from
yes.
this month. And,
Uh-huh.
she works with lots of people in big
Mm,
corporations. And so that it's really interesting to compare notes on
mm,
how that works. But it is very rewarding when on the individual
mm.
level you can work with one person and see that change come about. And so,
Yes,
yeah. I don't
yes.
really have an end point to this statement. I'll
Mhm.
stop.
Yes.
But it is interesting to compare notes on that.
Yes, and Sabina is doing a wonderful work with our Facebook group.
She sure
And
is.
she is, oh my God, it's a lot of work, and she's doing that so perfectly. I'm so grateful. Yes.
We I can't believe it, it seems like every day there's 2 or 3 of those welcome our latest members, and there's like
Yes.
50 names on there or something.
Yes, yes, and people want to post and to share, and she is so very carefully managing all of that. And the questions she put, and then the quotas, perfectly done. Yes.
Absolutely, very much so. What are maybe some unexpected benefits or outcomes that you have experienced as a logotherapist?
Oh, well, the best thing actually is one of my colleagues told me many years ago that in our coaching program, you have a manager coming in, and then at the second session, there is a human being.
Oh, nice.
Yes, my colleague Mirjana Gomilanovic, she's also a coach, and that was a wonderful actually explanation for what I'm doing. I don't do logotherapy, so I'm not a
Right,
clinician.
me too.
Yeah, yeah, I'm using it in my work, but it so much enormously helped me. I cannot recall how I did coaching without knowing all these things about meaning and purpose and values. Of course, we learn in our coaching schools about values and everything. But for instance, the manual connection with goals and values, Hatzel, that's that's something which is so useful,
Yes,
unbelievable, really.
yes.
So yes, there are many benefits because I think, for example, I'll give you the example. I have most of the time in engineers are my clients, and we have in coaching we have chemistry session, meaning that the client meets few of us, and then they choose whom they want to work with. So when I have engineer at the chemistry session, I know they will pick me up over psychiatrists or
Hmm.
psychotherapists because they see order and structure and they know I
Yes.
will understand their background. So I'm working with them. And they're not very open from the beginning to talk about big topics or to do some silly exercises, or to use tools. So what I usually do is I start with asking them powerful questions. And powerful questions, although I learned many of them in coaching, my coaching education, when I came to logotherapy, the questions just blew my mind. Um, the questions I got during my studies, and there is also a very good book written in Croatian language by the late Professor Robert Torek, who was a psychiatrist, and the title of the book Is There Life Before Death?
Oh, okay.
And it's a wonderful book. He was actually a philosopher more than he was a psychiatrist. He was not very fond of the modern psychiatry, and he criticized it a lot. So in
That sounds familiar.
yes,
I may have
yeah.
heard of this. Robert.
Maybe, yes. So, anyways, in this book of his, he has a list of so powerful questions related generally to the title, Is There Life Before Death? So, when you ask these questions, people start thinking, or they just open the part of their mind that they never thought that existed. And those are the benefits which I can see straight away. And then when they open up, then I can work with them on some other things, or use some other exercises or tests or whatever I feel is important.
Well, see that story right there is very, very helpful to me, and I would assume to other people because, in many churches that I have served, there's always at least one man
Mm.
who I'm an engineer. I like logic. I like facts. I like black and white. I want it to be, don't give me touchy feely, and they have great value in a group, in an
Mm.
organization, or in a congregation, whatever. But they could also be insensitive and
Yes.
impatient, and so
Mm.
it's good to find a way to sort of activate their noetic frame of mind. So that's very helpful.
Oh, yes. Yes. And usually they play instruments, this
Yes.
logical, so music is very good for them. And the third thing I usually offer them, because I like making all sorts of diagrams
Mhm.
from the theory.
Sure.
So I usually make diagrams that are not easy to understand, but for engineers, as soon as they look at it, they say, aha, that's logotherapy. I presented logotherapy in the three-dimensional system. So
Okay.
I put Freud and Adler in 2 dimensions, and I said, this is it, but you have Freud with third dimension. And engineers would say, oh, okay, now I know what you're doing.
There we go.
Yes.
So you probably liked geometry better than algebra.
Oh, no, I like algebra. I'm fascinated with numbers, but I
Okay.
like geometry also. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
You made me think of Pythagoras earlier, but
Oh, Pythagoras is my favorite. Yes. Numbers and music, whatever do you need? What more do you
yes,
need?
numbers, music, and mysticism all in one. Okay.
Yes.
Very, very good. Okay. Let's see what else. When you're counseling or working with, oh, I'm sorry. So did you got your diplomate in logo philosophy or logotherapy?
Logotherapy.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because mine is logo philosophy, and
Mhm.
I don't know anybody else has that degree, that diplomate, but me. I may be the first. I'm kidding. I'm sure there's somebody else who does,
Uh,
but I'm not a therapist either.
mhm.
Although I do think that that line is really blurry. It's really
Mhm.
not clear because
Mhm.
I think what I do in some ways is more than therapy
Mhm.
because we go beyond the human spirit to the Holy Spirit, shall we say? But
Mhm.
but also because it's so long term,
Mhm.
depending on who I'm working with. And of course, it's also voluntary. Some people they don't want anything to do with it. So,
Mhm.
but you mentioned also not being a therapist, and so I thought that was an interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, now when you're working with a client
Mhm.
and they become very emotional about something,
Mhm.
what's that like, and how do you deal with that?
This is a very good question. Um, because usually when I work, it's a kind of coaching that does not involve emotions that much. If there are too strong emotions, and I sense that I cannot deal with it, the rule is that I send them to psychotherapists.
Yes. Okay.
That is what I do. I had a case with a group, for instance, where the group member had almost a nervous breakdown while we were working together. We had a group coaching session all day, and he literally had almost like a nervous breakdown because he was in a burnout. And then I had to discuss it with an HR, and he was referred to a psychotherapist. So I don't deal that much with emotions. That is not my area. I think some rep therapist would be much better into that. And what we do is related, as I was saying, to improving their leadership skills. You know, they come to me, usually those are engineers who are very good in their work, and then suddenly they promote them to be leaders, and they're completely lost. They
Right.
never ever. Can you imagine an engineer who is now in a position to lead people? They're completely lost. So usually they either send them to the MBA studies where they gain the knowledge but not skills of leading people. And then they send them to trainings to learn about leadership skills, team building skills, team working skills, communication skills. And then they are sent to coach. And then I individually work with them and tailor the program which will suit their needs. So,
Very nice.
yeah, not that many emotions on
That's
there.
okay. I think you gave me a really good answer. And what you said was you refer them. And of course, that's also something that I do a lot, is I will tell anybody who wants to meet with me, I will be very happy to sit with you as a pastor, you know.
Yeah.
But if it's a certain kind of situation like family counseling, um, I probably could do family counseling, but I refuse to do it.
Yeah.
I always say I will sit down and meet with you for an hour, and then I will refer you to somebody, you
Yeah.
know. And a lot of times, what we do and what I do, I look at it as triage, you know, um, because at a church, you know, and this is a pretty highly populated area, people can come to the door and they may be having a psychotic situation because
Yes.
they're bipolar and they didn't take their medicine, you know, schizophrenic and they didn't take their medicine and they wandered away and then they happened to come to a church,
Yes.
you know, and actually I think that relates to what Franco wrote in Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning, or Der Unbewusste Gott, about that even people who are psychotic or having those issues can still be spiritual, you know. And so we've experienced that, but I don't do therapy with them. I just keep them calm until somebody can calm. But
Can
that's a set of skills that not everybody has, but a logotherapist or a logo philosopher would have, you know.
Yes, you're right. You know, I think it's much easier for me because before we start working with the client, we sign the coaching agreement. And
Hmm.
a very important part of coaching agreement is the fact that they admit that they understand that coaching is not psychotherapy.
Oh, good.
So,
Yes.
which
Okay.
is very, very good. And that agreement is the first thing I do always. And of course, we talk before we start working together what they can expect from me. And I assume when they come to the priest, they expect that you can solve.
Well, I don't know if they even know that, but they know they need something. And for me, the value of logotherapy is that even though I received this theological education, you know, the ability to read Hebrew and Greek and teach the Bible or preach a sermon or whatever, what I needed, I didn't get in that training. What I needed, I got from logotherapy, and that is how to engage people on a human level, how to speak face to face with somebody and help them in that moment. And so to me, I think Frankl himself would say that theology is higher and psychology is lower. But in my case, I had this, but I didn't have this.
Mm,
It was nice to put those two together. Um,
yes.
I'm not sure how I'm answering your question, but anyway, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so just working with people on that level, but you and I and Sabine and others, we're not psychotherapists, and we're okay with that.
Yes,
But we like
yes.
logotherapy as a
Mm,
part of what we do.
yes. Yeah, that's true.
I like that. Okay. We kind of talked about this before we started recording, but as I understand it, the religious landscape there in Serbia, I'm sorry, yeah, Serbia, is
Mm-hmm.
quite complicated thanks to
Mm-hmm.
many, many years of history, many centuries of history. And so, my final question,
Mm-hmm.
I know the answer already, but do you see logotherapy as a kind of bridge of understanding between diverse people?
Yes, definitely. I was not thinking about that in the sense of how would I do that. It definitely is. And as I already said, I think we have different religions here, different nations, different big diversity. So how I would apply directly logotherapy in connecting, I can't say at the moment, but generally just promoting it and speaking about what it promotes can by itself be helpful.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for a wonderful conversation, and I'm very convinced that everyone who watches this podcast will find it very useful to them and very enlightening. And glad to call you a colleague and a friend. And thank you for this interview today.
Well, thank you again for the invitation. I also learned a lot, and I hope people will find interesting things and useful things, not just too much talking about myself. So
So,
let's
did a
hope.
great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay.